On the morning she learned the house was no longer hers alone, Myra noticed the silence first. It was a soft, padded silence, like a room where the furniture had been rearranged in the dark. She stood in the kitchen barefoot, holding a mug that had gone cold, and listened to the unfamiliar rhythm of breathing down the hall. 2 breaths. One shallow, one confident. Not hers. Not his alone anymore. The wedding had been small. Almost apologetic. White chairs borrowed from a neighbor, a borrowed arch of flowers that wilted by evening. Myra remembered thinking that small meant safe. That love shrank itself to fit the lives it entered. She had been wrong. Love expanded. It brought things with it. Boxes. Shoes. A second toothbrush. He told her after breakfast. After he kissed her forehead the way he always had, careful not to smudge what little piece remained. He said it calmly, as if explaining a new grocery list. That Lena would be staying for a while. That honesty mattered. That marriage could be flexible if they were brave enough. He used the word open like it was a window. Like fresh air. Myra watched his mouth move and felt her body recede. Not leave. Just step back a little. She noticed the crack in the ceiling above him. The way the sunlight caught dust and made it float, aimless and beautiful. She nodded because nodding was easier than speaking. Because speaking would have required choosing which part of herself to sacrifice first. Lena appeared in the doorway later, hair still damp from the shower, wrapped in one of his shirts. Too big on her. Too intimate. She smiled with the softness of someone who had already been forgiven by someone else. Myra felt something collapse then. Not loudly. Quietly. Like a shelf giving way inside a wall. They tried to be gentle with her. Both of them. He asked if she wanted tea. Lena asked what music she liked. Kindness arrived too late to be useful. Myra answered politely, mechanically, as if she were a guest in her own life. She folded laundry that was not hers. She stepped around shoes that blocked the hallway. She learned new sounds. Lena laughing. Lena crying. The bed shifting at night. He explained the rules one evening, sitting across from her at the table where they had signed their wedding papers weeks before. Transparency. Communication. No lies. He said love was not a finite resource. Myra thought of the way her chest hurt when she breathed. How pain felt very finite. Very precise. At night she lay awake and counted the seconds between sounds. She remembered how he used to reach for her in his sleep, hand finding her waist like it belonged there. Now his hand hesitated. Sometimes it went the other way. Sometimes it stayed still, uncertain, as if waiting for permission from the dark. She did not cry at first. Crying would have meant admitting that something precious was gone. Instead she grew careful. She ate less. She spoke softly. She learned how to disappear in plain sight. In the mirror she noticed new hollows in her face, as if grief was sculpting her slowly, lovingly. The brother came over one afternoon to fix a leaking sink. He had always been around. Always the quiet one. He moved through the house with respect, as if it were a church. He asked before touching anything. He looked at Myra when she spoke. Really looked. It startled her. She had forgotten what it felt like to be seen without being assessed. They sat on the floor afterward, backs against the cabinet, sharing the last of the afternoon light. He did not ask questions. He did not offer advice. He just listened to the silence with her. In that silence, Myra felt her heart beat again, weak but persistent. Like a small animal refusing to die. When he left, the house felt heavier. Lena was cooking. The smell of spices filled the air. Myra went to the bedroom and closed the door. She sat on the bed that no longer belonged to her alone and pressed her face into the pillow. It smelled like him. And like someone else. She breathed anyway. That night, as the house settled, Myra understood something without words. That love, when bent too far, did not stretch. It broke. And the sound it made was not loud enough to warn anyone. She lay there, staring at the dark, waiting for morning, already grieving the woman she had been when she believed staying was the same as surviving. In the small hours before dawn, footsteps crossed the hallway. A door opened. Another closed. Myra counted again, not seconds now, but choices. Each sound a decision she had not made. She thought of her name on envelopes, on forms, on the marriage license folded in a drawer. How ink pretended permanence. How easily paper tore. She rose and went to the bathroom, splashing water on her face, watching it drip from her chin. The woman in the mirror looked older than she felt. Or younger. Time was confused here. She touched her ring and felt nothing. No heat. No weight. Just metal. From the other bedroom came a low murmur. A laugh cut short. Myra leaned against the wall until the cool steadied her. She imagined herself stepping outside, walking until the house was small, until the road erased her footprints. The thought did not comfort her. It frightened her with its clarity. When the sky finally paled, she dressed quietly and made coffee for one. She sat at the table and let it go untouched, steam thinning into nothing. In the stillness, she made herself a promise she did not yet understand. That she would not beg. That she would not vanish. That if she had to become someone else to live, she would choose who that someone was. Behind her, a door opened. She did not turn. The sound was enough. It told her everything she needed to know about the day that was coming. Myra learned how to leave without leaving. She woke earlier, spoke later, took longer routes through rooms. The house adjusted around her absence, learning her weight no longer mattered. Lena hummed while cooking. Her husband read news aloud as if noise could fill gaps. Myra carried quiet like a second spine. When the brother returned, it was raining. He shook water from his coat, apologized for the weather, and smiled with a restraint that felt respectful. Myra noticed her shoulders drop. She noticed breathing become possible again, briefly, dangerously. The moment lingered, fragile, before routine reclaimed the space again silently. Days stacked themselves with careful patience. Myra learned new rules she never agreed to. She learned when to knock, when to wait, when to pretend sleep. At meals she smiled at correct moments, passing salt like a peace offering. Her husband spoke about freedom, about honesty, about growth. The words sounded rehearsed. Lena listened with bright concentration. Myra watched their hands drift closer, retreat, then settle. At night she washed cups slowly, listening to laughter soften into murmurs behind closed doors. The sink dripped steadily, counting time she no longer trusted or owned. Each drop felt accusatory, small, endless, awake. He came on a Sunday afternoon, carrying oranges and a quiet apology. The brother never crossed lines. He asked permission to sit. He fixed nothing that day. They talked about ordinary things. Weather. Work. The way oranges reminded Myra of childhood winters. She surprised herself by laughing. The sound startled her, then warmed her. He did not stare. He did not flinch. When he left, the house dimmed, as if light had followed him outside without asking. Myra sat alone afterward, palms open, wondering why emptiness felt newly shaped. She closed her hands, afraid of losing something unnamed again today. His wife noticed nothing, or noticed everything and chose silence. The brother sent no messages. He respected the fragile geometry. Myra respected it too, until respect began to resemble self-erasure. One evening, after another careful dinner, her husband said openness required courage. He asked if she was brave enough. The question landed softly, cruelly. Myra looked at the table, at rings of water-staining wood. Courage, she realized, had been demanded only of her. She nodded, because refusal would require belief she deserved different terms. Later she lay awake, rehearsing disappearances, rehearsing voices, rehearsing endurance alone in the dark. Rain returned the day everything shifted. Myra stood at the window while Lena packed for a trip. Her husband was gentle, relieved. Space would help, he said. Myra felt something unclench. The brother called about a borrowed book. His voice arrived like a handrail. They met for coffee, cautiously, publicly. He listened. He never compared. When Myra cried, embarrassed, he slid a napkin closer without comment. The relief frightened her more than grief ever had. Afterward she walked home slowly, cataloguing the way kindness altered gravity. It pulled her upright, then forward, then somewhere unfamiliar and terribly quiet inside her. She told her husband about coffee as a courtesy. He smiled too quickly. He reminded her of agreements. Myra agreed again, tired of arguing with air. That night, she dreamed of rooms rearranging themselves, doors appearing where walls had been. She woke with the taste of decision in her mouth. It tasted like metal and hope. In the mirror she practiced honesty, then put it away. She was not ready to be believed, even by herself. Belief required witnesses, and she had learned how witnesses vanished. Morning arrived without permission, pale and ordinary, refusing to explain anything to her heart. The brother waited longer this time before calling. When he did, his voice carried hesitation, a respect that felt like care. They walked in a park, leaving space between them. Leaves clung wetly to benches. Myra spoke carefully, choosing truths that would not ignite anything. He listened anyway, with a steadiness that asked nothing back. When she mentioned openness, he winced, briefly. It was the only judgment she had seen, and it was not for her. The relief made her dizzy, like standing after long kneeling. They parted without promises, carrying silence like fragile glass between their careful hands now. At home, tension waited faithfully. Lena returned sunburned, cheerful. Her husband kissed Myra's cheek with practiced warmth. He spoke about balance. Myra heard boundaries closing. That night, lying awake, she understood something small and devastating. Survival had taught her compliance, not joy. She pictured the brother's quiet attention, the way it did not demand performance. The comparison hurt, then healed, then hurt again. Healing, she realized, was not a straight line. It circled back on itself, revisiting wounds, asking patience she barely possessed. Myra stared at the ceiling, counting breaths, choosing not to disappear tonight, quietly, deliberately, still, awake there. The decision announced itself without drama. Myra asked for time apart. Not divorce. Not forgiveness. Time. Her husband looked startled, wounded, relieved. Lena watched with careful neutrality. Myra packed a bag with shaking hands, choosing soft clothes, a book she had never finished. At the door she paused, expecting collapse. None came. Only a hollow steadiness. Outside, air felt sharp. She walked to the brothers' building, then stopped across the street, heart pounding. She realized choice felt heavier than endurance, and lighter than despair. She did not knock, yet, honoring fear like a boundary in the quiet rain-washed evening light. Myra turned back, bag cutting into her palm. She would not trade one cage for another. She would build a pause, a room with a door she controlled. The brother did not know yet. That mattered. Choice had to be hers alone first. As she walked, tears came, unasked, warm. They blurred streetlights into halos. The world did not end. It waited. And in that waiting, Myra felt the knife edge of freedom, sharp, lonely, honest. She kept walking, learning the weight of self-possession step by step. Behind her, doors closed softly, without apology, without pursuit or explanation offered. Myra lived alone for a season that felt longer than it was. She rented a narrow apartment with windows that faced nothing interesting, and that was a mercy. Silence there was honest. It did not hide anything behind closed doors. She learned the sounds of her own body again, the creak of knees on stairs, the sigh she made before sleep. Some nights she cried without knowing why. Other nights she felt nothing at all. Both were acceptable. Healing, she learned, was not improvement. It was permission. She met the brother again by accident, in a bookstore where the lights hummed softly. They stood between shelves like strangers who had once shared a language. He did not reach for her. He smiled, careful. She felt relief flood her chest, sharp and clean. They talked about books they loved but had never finished, about endings that felt too heavy to carry. When they parted, there was no promise, only a quiet acknowledgement of something living between them, patient, restrained, breathing. Time did what it always did. It moved without asking. Myra signed papers she did not read closely enough and became unmarried on a Wednesday afternoon. No courtroom drama. No raised voices. Just ink drying and a door closing without ceremony. Her former husband did not fight. He looked tired. Lena did not appear. Myra felt sorrow without hatred. It surprised her. She carried it home like a fragile bowl, careful not to drop it or turn it into bitterness. The brother waited until she spoke first. When she did, her voice shook with unfamiliar authority. They walked, then sat, then eventually stayed. Slowly, carefully. Their closeness felt like stepping into water whose depth could not be guessed. He asked questions. He listened to answers even when they were unfinished. Myra learned that desire could exist without pressure, that affection could pause without punishment. It frightened her how safe it felt. Safety had once been a myth. The family learned last. Whispers arrived before explanations. Some were kind. Some were not. Myra did not defend herself. She did not explain timelines or intentions. She had learned that clarity was not owed to those who had already decided who she was. The brother absorbed more of the discomfort than she did, shielding without claiming. She loved him for that, quietly, with a reverence that surprised them both. There were nights when memory returned uninvited. The old house. The careful dinners. The sound of doors closing. Myra would wake with her heart racing, convinced she had done something wrong simply by wanting more. On those nights, the brother did not fix anything. He held her hand until the shaking passed. Sometimes he said nothing. Sometimes he admitted fear of his own. Their honesty was unpolished. It felt real. Years did not transform them into something grand. They became ordinary. Shared groceries. Missed calls. Small arguments about nothing. Myra cherished the ordinariness. It meant no one was performing survival. It meant the world had not ended because she had chosen herself. Occasionally she passed her former husband in public. They nodded. He looked smaller somehow, not diminished, just distant. She felt tenderness without longing. That surprised her too. One afternoon, Myra sat alone in her apartment, sunlight catching dust as it always had. She thought of the woman she had been, nodding at tables, learning to disappear. She felt grief for her. She felt gratitude too. That woman had endured long enough to make this possible. Myra touched the window glass, warm beneath her fingers, and breathed without counting. When the brother came home that evening, he found her sitting quietly, nothing dramatic in her posture. She told him she was happy. The words felt strange, insufficient, but true. He believed her without asking for proof. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent, generous. Inside, Myra felt a stillness that was not emptiness. It was space. Space she had earned. Space she intended to keep.